Welcome to Startup Spokane, where hosts Steve Traben and Megan Halsey explore the excitement and momentum growing throughout Spokane's expanding startup community. Startup Spokane is a joint effort between Greater Spokane Incorporated's Startup Spokane, our friends at Well Dressed Walrus, and Spokane Talks Online. Now, here are your hosts, Steve and Megan.
Welcome to Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Media, your podcast home for everything entrepreneurship related in the Spokane region. As you know, Startup Spokane is a program of Greater Spokane Incorporated, and whether you have an idea or you're launching or growing your business, we're here to provide you with the resources you need so that you can be successful. Megan, let's get this conversation going. How about introducing our guest today?
Yeah, today I'm really excited to be talking about passion and lifestyle businesses, because at Startup Spokane we work with businesses across the range, whether it's just a small business, a lifestyle focused business, or a scalable industry. And today we're talking about with Russ Feist, who is co-founder and co-owner of Barili Cellars.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me here. It is a challenge as a small business owner and as almost a side hobby job. So it's a challenge.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a unique business, right? I mean, you have a job at Avista.
Correct.
You and I actually started this winery in 2007.
Yes.
And we did this on the side of our day jobs, which is a different type of model, I guess, for entrepreneurs.
But it's something that's pretty common, not only in the wine industry, but in a number of different kinds of industries as well. So tell me, how did you guys do that? How did you find time and how did you get interested in it?
Well, it started all off with me looking for some grapes, sourcing grapes. Home wine person started, literally in the basement sort of thing, and looking for some grapes and talked to one of the growers, and just so happened Steve was going down to pick up some grapes, and that was how we met.
Yep. And the rest is history.
Exactly.
So, yeah, Russ and I both made wine at home winemakers, hobbyists.
Yes.
That situation brought us together, and we continued to make wine at home together, and kind of serendipitously met other people that were making wine, and when you start
sharing equipment,
you start drinking wine, you start falling in love with the idea of, wow, wouldn't it be cool to
own a winery?
Yes. And
yes.
I think that was kind of the beginnings. And I think at that time, back in the 2006 time frame, there were probably 500 or so wineries in the state of Washington, right?
That's an area that's really blossomed. So how many are there now?
About 950-ish, roughly. Yep. So yeah, it's doubled.
Yeah, and since 2007, how many more wineries have we introduced in the Spokane area? I know that seems like that's grown really fast.
It has. Right now we've got 21 wineries, and a lot of them now are coming in out of Walla Walla.
Okay, great.
So they make, so they're extending their tasting rooms, right? But it creates, I guess we're kind of jumping ahead of the story, which is fine, but it creates more pie, more slices of the pie, right? So, I mean, you're sharing the market with a lot more wineries, and we'll probably talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah. No.
So, Russ, let's talk a little bit about just sort of the process of starting a winery, right? I mean, and
so we literally, Steve and I started from the ground up. So we had no building, we had no license, we had nothing but an idea and some equipment. And we met John Caudell and Jerry, who were up on Overbluff, started Overbluff Winery, and we collaborated with them, started sharing equipment, and literally they built a little small building in the back of Jerry's yard, and it was fully bonded and licensed, and that's where we first started making our first batch of wine.
That's right, and our first batch of wine was 2 barrels, one barrel of Syrah and a barrel of Cabernet Sauvignon.
That's right.
And we were fortunate enough when they, because they actually, what would you say? They carried our wine under their bond.
Right.
So when Russ and I found our location on 2nd Avenue in the Pluckner building at 610 West 2nd or 608 West 2nd, through the generosity of Steve Salvatore, who said he had just purchased this building, had a basement that was unusable, and had a very small retail location on the first floor. And we literally transferred those 2 barrels of red wine over to where Barili Cellars is today.
Right.
And I think I'd like to think we were brilliant with our marketing strategy, but 2 barrels of wine equates to about 50 cases on a good day.
Yeah.
And you tell the rest of the story, Russ.
Yeah, so we got set up, and Steve Salvatore did a great job. He redid that whole lobby to make it look
beautiful.
like a wine cellar. It was gorgeous. He did an awesome job for us, and we thank him for that. But yeah, back to the story. We got the barrels, tucked them down in the basement. We thought we were really great. We got some white wine because you can turn white wine in a year, and so we thought we were golden. We were going to open up in the spring, get some cash flow. We opened up Mother's Day around the holiday there, and sold out.
Yep.
So we had nothing.
We had
nothing left to sell. Had to put a sign up and said, "Sorry, thank you.
Come back next year."
Exactly.
But you know what was brilliant? The brilliant part was that all of a sudden there's a scarcity of this wine, and the people are like, you can't even get their wine; they're sold out.
Yeah,
and so
sold out,
right? And so that all of a sudden they're like, well, that's got to be the best wine in the world.
So we got to do another opening as well.
Yeah.
We opened up again. Yeah, so it was good.
How many cases, how did you scale that? You started with 50 cases. Now, how many do you produce now, and what were the stair steps along the way?
Yeah, we do about 650 cases if you think about the wine that we sell, and also in bulk. So the stair stepping really was Steve and I didn't jump in. I mean, we talk about scalability and where the sweet spot is, and we knew the sweet spot was about 600, 500 cases. And then the next would probably be, wouldn't you say, about 3,000, 5,000 cases?
Yep. That's if you're going to make it if you want to make it a lifestyle business where you can quit your day job, you've got to be at about 5,000 cases.
Yeah.
Yep. So, but we deliberately set out to do this kind of on the side of our day jobs, and
we didn't start with a huge amount of money. Literally bootstraps. You know, we'd get this piece of equipment, and then we go, okay, well, what's the next weakest link in our chain? And then we get that little piece of equipment. So we started stair-stepping into it and ratcheted it up.
Yep, but it basically cash flowed from the beginning, really.
Yeah.
So what's been your focus as a winery? Where do you want to fit? What's your sweet spot? You're a boutique winery, so usually there's some catch. So you have a great price, you have a great product. Is it quality? Is it customer service? What's your thing?
It has to be almost all of those, because really we want to try to stay mid-range. It's funny. You price your wine too low, and people think it's not worth that much, and it's not that good. Too high a price, and Spokane's kind of it's not Seattle. Let's put it that way. And there are folks out there who are selling $50 bottles of wine, and it works for them. We're deliberately in that mid range, so $25, $20. A few of our whites are around $15. Yeah. So we want to stay in that range. Yeah. And then make good wine too, not just average wine, but. We always joke and say, well, if we have to shut the doors down tomorrow, we can just drink it ourselves. That's
a lot of wine to drink, but we could do it. And
and
we'll talk about the new owners here in a minute as well. But the other part that I always really thought was unique about how we operated in our winery was really personal touch with the customers. We wanted to educate them and help them understand the process that we go through to make wine. I think a lot of people take it for granted that from grape to the bottle, I mean, that's an easy thing, and it's not. And we try to really help people understand that process. And Russ continues to include people, customers, to come in and help with crush and bottling and those aspects.
That's right.
So since you guys are kind of a boutique winery that's a side business, what are your hours? Do you have normal operating hours, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, our hours are pretty sparse. It's first Fridays of every month and second Saturdays of every month. Okay. From 4 to 9 on Fridays and noon to 5 on that Saturday. And we just started the second Saturday thing because it was catchy, second Saturday, first Friday. And it really stemmed from just Gary and I, my other partner, who sold Steve, or Steve sold to Gary, excuse me, get that backwards. He and I needed to do some work. Almost every month, we have to be down there at least every month doing something. So we thought, we might as well be open.
Right.
We got to clean tanks, we got to move wine, we got to bottle wine, we got to do something. So let's just be open.
So do you have staff that works there? Or?
Yeah, you're looking at them. Yeah, no, it is a side job, side hobby. My sons, Gary and Sue Hustad, who is the other co-owner, and their family, and my wife, Marlene. That's it. That's us.
No,
That's a lean operation.
It is.
Well, it has to be.
Family-owned business, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But it's cash flow positive, and the winery continues to reinvest the earnings into bigger equipment to help scale it. And so you go down and you see new French oak barrels now stamped with Barili on it.
That's right.
And it's really exciting. And when we come back from break, I want to talk a little bit about the transition from my participation in the winery to Gary and Sue joining, and some of the other really cool, unique things that both Gary and Russ have thought about in terms of how to deliver wine to their consumers in a special way. So we're having a great conversation with Russ Feist, co-owner of Barili Cellars. Stay with us on Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Media. We'll be right back.
The following is sponsored by our friends and community supporters at McNeese Wheeler Attorneys. McNeese Wheeler is a boutique law firm in Spokane, handling matters in both Washington and Idaho. Areas of law include business law, wills, trusts and estates, family law, personal injury and wrongful death, and real estate matters. For your full-service legal needs, contact McNeese Wheeler Attorneys.
I'm Nikki Butler, and I'm a regional manager for STCU. My lunch buddy is Nicole.
I'm Brandy Schloss. I'm a regional manager at STCU. My lunch buddy is Angelina. She's grown up with me. I've grown up with her. To see her graduate will be a lot of fun.
Brandy and I have been lunch buddies since the girls were in 2nd grade. It's great that STCU provides me with the opportunity to be part of Reach for the Future. We are committed to the children. We're committed to our community. I'm Nikki.
I'm Brandy.
And STCU is here for good.
Hi, I'm Larry Myers, owner of River Ridge Hardware. Welcome to our garden center here on the corner of Garland and Driscoll. We have fresh plants that come in weekly from all of our local growers. We can make your garden look like our garden. Here at River Ridge, we've been here 30 years. We're your full-service neighborhood hardware store. This is our sprinkler aisle, where my knowledgeable staff will help you put together your sprinkler system so it will make your yard lush green for the spring and summer. This is River Ridge Hardware's rental center, where we provide a multitude of equipment for rent for the do-it-yourselfer. Next time you're working on your home or yard this spring and summer, stop by, say hi, and we'll help you get the project done.
Welcome back to Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Media. We're having a great conversation, a fun conversation with Russ Feist of Barili Cellars. And before we left break, we were starting to talk about Gary and Sue Hustad.
Yes.
You and I and our wives partnered from 2007 to I think 2011, and I dropped the big bomb that this is getting to be too much for me with the day job, and it gave us some choices. And you really wanted to keep the winery going, and thrilled that you did because you've done a great job with it. But it was interesting for us to try to figure out how on earth would we replace a partner,
right? And how to do that?
Yeah, and so we kind of grasped at it. We put an ad in a national wine publication and spent hundreds of dollars, and it got nothing. And out of the blue, just thought we would play with Craigslist. And
I know, weird. It's weird.
And we posted an ad on Craigslist, and we got some tire kickers. That's what Russ calls them, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Lots of people that knew they wanted to have a winery, but they weren't going to have a winery.
No, didn't know the first thing about it.
But I really do think it was serendipity. Sue and Gary Hustad, who own what's their business?
Custom Auto Body.
Custom Auto Body on Monroe, came forward, and it was like a perfect match.
It was.
And
it was perfect.
And they came in and purchased our half of the business, and we spent a year, an entire production cycle, kind of going through a transition with them to make sure that, bring them up to speed and not leave, put a big burden on Russ. Yeah. And
it's worked great ever since.
Great.
Yeah.
And they continue to do wonderful things. And Gary has this engineering background, and he, we're in the basement of a building that doesn't have an elevator. It has stairs. We have there's heavy equipment.
Yes, there is.
And getting stuff up and down, it can be a challenge.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So anyway.
So where do we get Barili Winery? So where do you go to buy the wine?
Yes, so that's a good question. You can't only get it out of the winery. That's out of the retail shop is the only place that you can buy it. You can buy it in a restaurant. We self-distribute to restaurants and local bars, and a wine shop here in town as well.
Great.
So
yeah, and Russ, talk a little bit about. I mean, that was a deliberate decision.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think people understand the distribution model and what percentage that takes off the top, if you will.
Right. So if you go through a distributor and let them distribute your wine for you, and they will go out and sell to the restaurants, the bars, and stock the shelves at the grocery stores, they typically want 50% off the top of your retail price. And as a small business owner, and I don't have the volume that some of the other folks have, and I just can't, it doesn't pencil out with 50% off unless I jack the price way up. And that would be retail. And again, that goes back to our model, trying to keep it in the mid-price range. I could do it for $50 a bottle and let them sell it for $25, but that's not the experience we really want. And then I've tried to sell to grocery stores, but it's a tough business. Getting it in is one thing, and then keeping it on the shelves where consumers can see it, because you've got distributors fighting. And I don't go to a store and look where my wine is, but one time I did and found it. Started out at the beginning, at the middle of the shelf, perfect ice, right at eye level. Walked in, I was at the very bottom, at the very beginning of the aisle, the worst place you could be. And I walked back and forth, and I couldn't find it at all, so I had to go get some help. He goes, "Oh, it's down here in the bottom." Yeah. Well, what they do is they grab at me because they're fighting for space, right? Sure. They're selling their product,
right?
And I'm not one of their people, so I go in the very bottom. It's competitive, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. It's just that way. So we want to go back to more of that personal touch, like Steve was saying. So when we talk to the restaurants, they're usually people we know, people that we've gone and we eat their food there, we go there. We've done some cold calls a couple of times, but we'll have our day jobs, and so we're not real. We're pretty cash.
So which restaurants can you find Barili in?
You can find us at Mamma Mia's. You can find us at the Steelhead. You can find us at Black Label Brewing Company, one of those, 12-String Brewing Company. Yep. You can tell I like beer.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And let's segue, because beer. A lot of these craft beer guys, they're not putting it in bottles anymore. They're doing it in kegs. And
correct.
I am just thrilled to watch what Barili has done kind of in this, it's almost like a private label wine, but it's not in the bottle. So why don't you talk to our listeners about what you and Gary have done there?
Yeah. So I've got to give a shout out to Left Bank Wine Bar. Yeah. They were the ones that actually brought this to our attention and said, I'd really love to have some keg wine here because it'll last longer. And light went off and said, "Oh, I think we can do that. We don't know how." So we started talking about it and found out the process is really fairly easy. So now we sell wine by the keg, and it works really well for those breweries that don't sell a lot of wine. Yeah. The whole cool thing about it is it keeps so nicely in a keg. Not like a bottle where you open it and you have to drink it, right? You have to drink it in, 3-4 days or have some expensive, type of preservative. Yeah. No, not needed.
And tell them why. Because you're putting
CO2 or beer gas or nitrogen into the keg itself, so you keep the oxygen out.
The oxygen.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
and so that works out well. And then the other attribute of having keg wine is you're able to allow these proprietors to come into Barili and all the different varieties of wine that you have in stainless steel or oak, and you allow them to kind of blend their own
proprietary blend.
Yeah.
So you're saying that I could build startup wine?
You could build startup wine, startup red.
We may have a visit on the near future.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that, right? I mean, so you bring these people in, they will have like a blending party.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. It's nothing fancy, but that is exactly what we try to do. So we try to make it their own wine and try to sell it that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
If they want a lighter style or a heavier style, I know Left Bank likes a heavier style when it's, in the wintertime, and summertime we try to lighten it up a little bit for them.
Yeah.
So, and it just depends on their taste, right? Because they're the ones down there making it.
Yeah.
So it goes back to that, well, if we don't like the wine, we can drink it ourselves kind of thing, even for them.
And so, Russ, how does that, talk about it from a margin standpoint? Because back in the day when we're spending a $1 a bottle, 50 cents on a cork, $1 a label, now all of a sudden all of those costs are gone. Talk about how that affects the business.
Well, it affects the business on our end because we can keg wine for them a lot cheaper. And also, for them, I really stress the waste. That's really what they're trying to minimize. They're really scared. That's why you see a glass of wine for $8. They pretty much bought that bottle for $8, selling it to you because they know they're only going to get 1, maybe 2 pours out of that if they're lucky. If they move it quite a bit, then they'll get the 4 that usually come out of a bottle. But they're not counting on that. So they're really counting on that one-time hit to pay for that bottle, and anything else after that is their profit.
Yeah, and let's
So
say
here there's
go ahead.
Yeah, here it's all profit. I mean, they don't have to worry about that waste, and that's really what I try to sell.
And it's eco-friendly too, right?
So
exactly.
you don't have to worry about where the
because these bottles end up in other places. Yeah, so I just think it's congratulations on that. I'm just astounded with how that works and how it's really catching on.
Yeah.
So let's we've got a couple minutes left, I think. So let's talk a little bit about what advice or thoughts do you have? There's always people that are like, I'm going to start a cidery, or I'm going to start a winery or a distillery. What do you have to say to people that are thinking about that in this day and age?
Well, it's tough to say because I would say do it if you have the passion for it.
Yep.
That's the key. The sexiness, the coolness goes out after the first year, and you realize it's a lot of work. You're schlepping barrels, bottles, you name it, up and down or in and out of your vehicle. But I would say you got to have a passion. You really have to have a passion for it, and then start thinking about what you want to do. What's your model? I don't think you and I really had. Well. I shouldn't rat Steve out.
No,
we really didn't have a business plan written up that we could take somewhere. But we knew in our mind we had a model. I mean, we ran the numbers.
We had the numbers.
Where were the sweet spot? What do we need to do to get in that model? What how does that work? But we never actually put it down physically on paper.
I think you're right. I mean, we definitely had the cash flow pro forma. We watched
that.
Well,
we had that model.
So you ratted me out. Business plans are
outdated,
that's old school anyway, Russ. So it's funny because I remember when we were starting, the existing wineries were discouraging us, and I think you and I both realized they were discouraging us because they were worried about having more competition.
Right.
And like you, I mean, I think that I would encourage people to get into it if they have passion. I'd also say, crawl, walk, run. Don't give up your day job. Don't think you're going to put together an incredible event center around it. I mean, take baby steps into it and make sure that you get some traction there.
Right.
Is that kind of how you see it?
And so what have you learned about winemaking through the process? Have you become better wine tasters, more discriminating palates? What have you acquired through the process?
I would say yes, that we do have a little bit more discriminating palate. But I don't want to be a wine snob either, right? Because people always come in and want to know, well, what does go with this? What goes with that? I'm like, whatever you think, whatever you like, go with it.
Yeah. How much experimenting do you do these days in the production side? Do you experiment, or are you pretty? You've got kind of a recipe for success. Talk about that for a minute.
Yes. So we try to go out of the norm a little bit with our port. We've tried that, and we've messed around with our Chardonnay a little here and there. Barrel fermenting, no barrel fermenting in a stainless, then putting it in the barrel. We want to try to stay close to a wheelhouse that we know. But then again, we also want to try to venture out because everybody wants to know what's new. That's the first thing. I even say that when I go, well, what's new? What do you got that's new? If you don't have anything that's new, you got to have something.
Yeah. And that's what I would say has really evolved. When we started the winery, we had, three, maybe 4 varietals.
Yeah.
And today you've got...
Now we're up to 7 and 8 sometimes, depending on what we've got going.
That's really good. And Russ, I mean, we're about out of time, but I'd love for you to just kind of, promote Barili Cellars, tell people where they can get information, what your location is again.
Yeah. 608 West 2nd, downtown,
Yep.
for those of you who don't know. And then also the Cork District. We got to close with the Cork District.
Yep.
Yeah.
They are a great help and a great advocate for all of the wineries here in town.
Yeah, and that's really, the Cork District is a wraparound marketing engine, if you will, for
Yes.
the wineries, right? So that, and we might have a map of the Cork District that we can put up, and that map, kind of creates the trail, if you will, for the wine experience.
And
Yes.
they also do some great weekends and events around the wineries that help kind of promote the industry here in town, too.
Yes.
So, Russ, I want to thank you again, first for being a great partner, ex-partner, just kidding, and for what you're doing with Barili Cellars. I hope you'll all join us again for a future podcast here on Startup Spokane on Spokane Talks Media. Thanks, and have a great day.
Startup Spokane is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is a joint effort between GSI's Startup Spokane, Well Dressed Walrus, and Spokane Talks Online. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. We wish you a great and profitable day.